Welcome, President Alisi, Deacon McCormack, members of the Senior Team, Francis Sean, members of the administration, Mrs. McAvoy, faculty, staff, family, and friends. On behalf of the graduating class, I would like to welcome all of you to the commencement exercises for the Genesis class of 2017. We ask that you please remain standing for our opening prayer, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the singing of America. In the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. As we gather here this morning, let us all remember the honorable past on which Genesis rests, the laudable accomplishments of this year, and the bright future which lies before our graduates and this program. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we ask your blessing upon this commencement ceremony. We give thanks for all those who sacrificed this year with their time, talent, and treasure to make Genesis a family of faith, growth, and learning. We ask you, Father, that you bless our graduates this day, so they recognize the many gifts that you've given them and use those gifts to build your kingdom. We offer these prayers to your Son, our brother and Lord, Jesus. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Please turn and face the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in welcoming the President of Sverre, Mr. Robert Alisi.
Good morning, everyone, and it is my sincere privilege to welcome you to our graduation ceremony here for our Genesis class of 2017. Today is such a very special day for us. Before we begin the ceremony, I want to just take a moment to thank a few people. You would not have been able to do the things that you have done, the incredible things that you've done over the course of the last 3 years without tremendous help and support. First and foremost, from your parents who have been with you by your side, who have sacrificed to make this day possible. So I'd like to just take this moment to thank all of the parents, as well as the grandparents and families, extended families, who were there during this journey with you. And if you could just give them a round of applause at this time. While you were here with us, you had many people that helped you along your journey. You had the finest faculty that any middle school could possibly have. And I want to acknowledge all of our faculty members for being there for you during this time and give them a round of applause as well. Finally, two people that need special recognition. People who were there, have been there, and have really been the role models and the people that have made this program what it is. Our principal, Deacon McCormick, Deacon, thank you so much for everything you have done. And the person that makes it all run and all work smoothly, Mrs. McAvoy. Mrs. McAvoy. My last thank you is to our soon-to-be graduates, soon-to-be alumni of Genesis. You have, over the course of these last 3 years, provided us with talents and gifts beyond measure. We had an opportunity to speak this past week during graduation practice, and I shared with our graduates the tremendous pride that we all have here at Savarian in having had them part of our family for these past 3 years. You leave a very, very special part of each and every one of you with us. But I hope that you take that very special experience of Genesis with you wherever you go. It'll be a part of who you are and who you are to become. God has intended wonderful things for you. He's given you tremendous talents and gifts. He smiles upon you today for sure. And he knows that you are about to go out and to change the world. We say that to you each and every day. And each and every day you have a better understanding of what that call is. And that's really what this education in Genesis has been about, to help you to hear God's call, to understand how he wants you to use the gifts and the talents that he has given you to change his world. We have every confidence that you have been given that foundation, that you are ready to go out and to do incredible things. We've seen it over the course of these last 3 years. So on a personal note, I want to thank each and every one of you for being unbelievable, spectacular young men and women who are ready to go out and to do incredible things. But rest assured, what you have done here will always be remembered. Thank you. May God watch over you, bless you, and keep you close to his heart always. Congratulations.
Good morning. Traditionally, the welcome address is delivered by the salutatorian, the student with the second highest average in the class. This year, however, presents a special case in that we have 3 students who are tied in having the highest cumulative averages in their class, giving us 3 valedictorians. I would like to introduce the first of our co-valedictorians for the class of 2017, Lacey Rose de Lucia.
Good morning, President Alisi, Deacon McCormack, Mrs. McAvoy, administrators, faculty, family, and most importantly, the graduating class of 2017. It is an honor and a privilege to be standing here before you on this proud and happy day. Today marks the first time I have been on the stage and spoken to this many people. These past 3 years here at Genesis have been full of many firsts for me. A first, me, who barely spoke but a few words each day before coming to Genesis, participated in a debate. It began in Mr. Gorman's history class. The debate tourney of the year was on. Teams were picked and there were 3 rounds for the debate tournament. My team barely got past the first one. As I closely watched the top performing teams debate their topic, I started to lose faith in my team and in myself. But at Genesis, we have been taught to persevere and not to give up. Determined as ever, we learned from our mistakes and worked hard to prepare for the next round, which we knew was going to be difficult. We were debating against not only a great team, but some of our closest friends. We won that round and went on to win the tournament. The achievement was not the win, but the hard work, the belief in each other, and the fact that we could actually win. Thank you, Mr. Gorman.
for teaching me how to write persuasively and deliver my points with conviction. First, I play the violin. Oh, how often did my mom plead that I should learn an instrument? Not until I came to Genesis and met Mr. Lepofsky and Miss Chaliff did I begin my love of music. Miss Chaliff encouraged me to practice and excel. The story goes that when Mr. Lepofsky called my mom to say that I won the Music Director's Award, my mom asked, "Are you sure you mean Lacey? I have never seen her practice before." I told her later, the magic happens at school. First, I learned how to add negative numbers with a catchy song thanks to the creative teaching methods of Miss McClintock. Can you imagine my surprise when we were asked to create a music video in math class? Miss McClintock thanked me one marking period for achieving 100% in her class. Even after all the hard work she put in to teach me, she thanked me and gave me the credit. This selflessness is mirrored by all our teachers here. How could we be anything but selfless with your example? Here is a real first. Hearing out loud the phrase "chinky Chinese" in Mr. Snyder's literature class. The room went silent and the look on my classmates' faces were priceless. Emma, do you remember that day? Thanks for always looking out for me. Now, it's not what you think. We were beginning to read American-Born Chinese, a book that has won numerous literary awards. The book focused on the stereotypes placed on the Chinese and the main character of the book, Chinky. It was all okay though, because here at Genesis, we are not seen or judged by our gender, race, or the color of our skin, but we are seen through the eyes of God, each of us very special. Thank you, Mr. Snyder, for opening up the world to many different topics through your literature classes. First, when Miss Gilson tells you to check your essays for misspelled words, you better check your essays for misspelled words. To my horror, I had misspelled 3 words on an essay, and 15 points were deducted from my grade. I will never forget that day. Still in shock, I went home and asked my mom, "What do you think of a teacher that would deduct 15 points for only 3 misspelled words?" She replied, "That is one darn good teacher." Thank you, Ms. Gilson. Thank you, Ms. Gilson. You are one darn good teacher. You held me to a standard higher than I thought I could ever achieve. First, the Mrs. McAvoy face. I was so afraid of Mrs. McAvoy. I understand now that there was no other way to keep order over a class of creative, deliriously funny, ultra-intelligent, vivacious group of middle schoolers. I laugh to myself now that there was even a minute I was afraid of her. Can I let the cat out of the bag? Mrs. McAvoy is really nice. She did allow Aiden to ride his unicycle up and down the hallway last week. Thank you, Mrs. McAvoy, for your tough love, for your support, and endless guidance. I am so grateful for you. But here are the absolute best firsts for me. I could not wait to get to school in the morning. I have good friends who I trust and cherish. I've had an administration who every day created a safe, nurturing environment for me to achieve success and handle failures. Where other than Zavarian would you have a principal that is funnier than Seinfeld? Or a president that is so calm and kind? I've had the teachers who took the time to know me as an individual, know us all as individuals, push me out of my comfort zone, and expect more from me than I thought to ever expect from myself. For all of these first, I am better. We are better. To my classmates of 2017, congratulations. Thank you for sharing these 3 years with me. I wish you longevity of our memories here at Genesis. I wish for you all so much success. As you continue on your journey, be courageous, work hard, be humble, be kind, and live in the light of God. Thank you to my Mimi and Papa for all you do for me and for loving me unconditionally. My Aunt Denise, Uncle Gary, Matt, and Gabby for supporting me in everything I do. To my Aunt Colleen, who sits on my shoulder as my guardian angel, I love and miss you every day. To my mom, I love you so much. Thank you for being such a cool mom. I would not be the person I am today if it wasn't for you. And now, I leave you with this. Eleanor Roosevelt once said, The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. If Genesis has taught us anything, it is that we certainly must believe in our dreams, but not idly. All of you, have taught us to work relentlessly at achieving them. We promise to take that lesson with us. Thank you.
We request that the class of 2017 come forward as their names are called to receive their diplomas. Please hold your applause until all the graduates' names have been called. Tomaso Ramirez. Gisela San Juan. Frank Fimafredo. Catherine Kinchud. Christian Buenana. Juliana D'Onofrio. James Haas. Angelina Antioco. Michael Palumbo. Antonetta Raymond. Anthony Figueroa. Teresa Spieler. Dean Zizera. Hannah Brown. Jeffrey Bosty. Jacqueline Mangini. Alexander Eriquez. Brielle Reynolds. Vincent Zedekase. Alana Barger. Aiden O'Connor. Mary Patrick Sullivan. Alec Lorza. Lacey Rose DeLucia. Jahia Carter. Francesca Fontana. Jack Salmo. Rena Bradola. Christopher Vasquez. Emma Markey. Matthew Bartolomeo. Olivia Artizone. Carmine Spada. Maggie Albunio. Andrew D'Alessio. Neve O'Hara. William Modica. Mackenzie Nelson. Ryan Gershon. Daniela Benitez. Michael Visconti. Christina Markovinovich. Renato Schoenfeld. Gia Esposito. Darian Ruiz. Jillian Savoya. Josiah Carter. Tara Meehan. Christopher Bly. Gabrielle Venegas. Benjamin Kanzer. Faith Ann Cusack McPartland. Richard Pupello. Grace Woods. Vincent Coluccio. Veronica Almonte. Ethan Jackson. Autumn Parlator. Christopher Ragna. Amanda Sahadi. Giancarlo Conti. Thomas Kimmeth. Alessandro Minetti. Aiden Eacock. Eric Newhouse. Jack Lando. Matthew Bowden. Christopher Code. Galilee Best. Jacob Gold. Juliana Tapadino.
I would ask our graduates to please stand. The authority of the State of New York, the Board of Regents, the Board of Trustees of Severian, and the recommendation of your teachers have empowered me to confer upon you the Diploma of Severian's Genesis program. Please change your tassels from the right to the left of your cap. Congratulations, you are Genesis alumni. You can be seated.
Please welcome our second co-valedictorian of the class of 2017, Catherine Kinshu.
Good morning, President Alisi, Deacon McCormack, Ms. McAvoy, parents, guests, and fellow graduates. It is an honor to speak to my classmates and their families as we celebrate our graduation from Genesis. Thinking about how much all of you have given me over the past 3 years is exceptionally humbling. Standing up here today feels a lot like the first day of school. I have butterflies in my stomach, I have no idea what I'm doing or how it's gonna go, and I feel like everyone is judging me. Thankfully, the last 3 years have prepared me to function relatively well in these circumstances, so here it goes. As I look out at everyone here, I find myself reflecting on the whirlwind of adventures Genesis has brought upon me. The friendships and the memories, advice and hard work have been the defining points of my life. To try to summarize or reflect on them is a daunting task. First, I need to note that through my own adventure, I have had guides who have taught me valuable lessons and brought me back from paths I'm glad I didn't go down. Lessons that my peers and I will bring far beyond our next 4 years of high school. Thank you to my family for supporting me and being the best possible role models. I am proud to be following in the footsteps of my older brother William, who stood up here 8 years ago making his own valedictory speech. Thank you to my teachers who have guided me through so much of this journey. Ms. Gilson, you introduced all of us to a new sense of independence and belief in ourselves as we conducted an entire research project in less than 3 months, even though most of us thought we would reach our deck by the end of mini history fair. Mr. Gorman, you made World War I a thrilling topic to learn this year. You may be the only teacher I'll ever have who will let us build a wall of desks in your classroom while simultaneously throwing wads of crumpled up paper at each other. There must have been a point about trench warfare, but all I can remember is how fun it was. Every morning, I've walked into your classroom and read the Alice in Wonderland quote you have posted on your wall. You're mad, bonkers, completely off your head. But I'll tell you a secret. All the best people are. From you, we have learned to be bold, believe in our passions, and never underestimate ourselves. Mr. Gorman, in the words of Alice, I knew who I was when I woke up this morning, but I've changed a few times since then. Thank you for changing us. Finally, Mr. Snyder, you have taught us how to defeat society's stereotypes through our class discussions about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And though you don't show it often, or ever, know that we love you too. In reflecting on this journey, one thing stands out. In the 7th grade, having recently finished reading A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, our literature teachers created an assignment where each of us belonged to a different family. Specifically, a family struggling with the issues of poverty in Williamsburg, Brooklyn during the 1930s. It was a difficult task, and being forced to survive on a certain amount of money every month definitely brought out the worst in my group's family of 5. We had to learn how to make decisions as a team, always making sure we didn't go over our budget each week. Amongst all of the complications and constant bickering, I learned how important it was to have faith and trust in the people around me, one of the basic principles of a family. Through this project, I realized that family is not something that comes easily, but instead it is built. Thank you, Xaverian, for building a family that has gotten me to this point. The whole Xaverian community that we have grown up around for the last 3 years has never failed to fill our hearts with kindness and generosity. From random acts of kindness week in 6th grade with post-it note compliments on every locker, to our first day as 8th graders 2 years later, where we passed on our advice and experiences to starting 6th graders. I made a point to reassure the incoming 6th graders that Ms. Gilson's class wasn't nearly as impossible as they heard it was going to be. Constant reminders of how special and talented each of us are prove that nothing really was impossible for any of us. Amidst all the encouragement and platitudes, we actually internalized the most important lesson of all, to believe in ourselves, to believe that our failures are stepping stones to success, that our skills surpass our expectations, that we are important, capable members of a community, and that we can bear the weight of the expectations that come with this belief. Throughout my 3 years at Genesis, I have truly formed the belief that we are the people who are capable of going above and beyond, bringing beautiful changes to our community. To end 7th grade, we read Brave New World. I'd like to echo a sentiment from that book. As we walk across this stage, we need to remember to embrace our role in affecting change and recognize how uniquely capable we are to do so. It's exciting and scary. It's a brave new world that has such people in it. Thank you.
Now, I'd like to invite Neve O'Hara to the stage to lead us in the 8th grade passing of tradition.
We in the 8th grade pass to our underclassmen brothers and sisters the flag and the cross. The flag is a symbol of our citizenship and our love of country. The cross is a symbol of our Genesis community, working together to ensure a wonderful educational experience. It is our hope that the 6th and 7th grade continue to serve their community and to lead their school in the next academic year.
The class of 2017 would like to present their parents with palankas. The graduates wish to thank their families for the love, support, and guidance they have received during their years at Genesis. We ask parents to meet their graduates at the front of the auditorium when their names are called. Mr. and Mrs. Radola. Mr. and Mrs. Raris. Mr. Solmo and Ms. Tierney. Mr. and Mrs. San Juan. Mr. and Mrs. Fontana. Mr. and Mrs. Fumafredo. Mr. Elaine and Miss Carter. Dr. and Mrs. Kinshu. Miss DeLucia. Mr. and Mrs. Bonanno. Mr. and Mrs. Lorza. Mr. and Mrs. D'Onofrio. Mr. Sullivan and Miss Doherty. Mr. and Mrs. Poss. Mr. and Mrs. O'Connor. Mr. and Mrs. Antioco. Mr. and Mrs. Gauger. Mr. and Mrs. Palumbo. Mr. and Mrs. Sedicase. Mr. and Mrs. Raymond. Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds. Mr. and Mrs. Figueroa. Mr. and Mrs. Eriquez. Dr. and Dr. Spieler. and Mrs. Mangini. Mr. Zazera and Miss McSorley. Dr. Basti and Dr. Kuhn Basti. Mr. and Mrs. Brown. Dr. and Mrs. Vasquez. Mr. and Mrs. Almonte. Mr. and Mrs. Markey. Mr. and Mrs. Coluccio. Mr. and Mrs. Bartolomeo. Mr. and Mrs. Woods. Mr. and Mrs. Artizone. Mr. and Mrs. Popello. Mr. and Mrs. Spada. Mr. and Mrs. Cusack McPartland. Mr. and Mrs. Albunio. Mr. Kanzer and Miss Fusco. Mr. and Mrs. D'Alessio. Dr. and Mrs. Venegas. Mr. and Mrs. O'Hara. Mr. and Mrs. Lai. Mr. and Mrs. Modica. Mr. Meehan and Miss Keegan. Mr. Nelson and Miss Amadeo. Mr. and Mrs. Savoya. Mr. and Mrs. Gershon. Mr. Ruiz and Miss Perez. Mr. and Mrs. Benitez. Mr. Esposito and Miss Arza. Mr. and Mrs. Visconti. Mr. and Mrs. Schoenfeld. Mr. and Mrs. Markovinovich. Mr. and Mrs. Jackson. Mr. and Mrs. Tepedino. Mr. and Mrs. Parlator. Mr. and Mrs. Gold. Dr. Brogna and Miss Bolletern. Mr. and Mrs. Best. Mr. and Mrs. Sahadi. Mr. and Mrs. Code. Mr. and Mrs. Conti. Mr. and Mrs. Bauman. Mr. and Mrs. Kimmeth. Mr. and Mrs. Lando. Mr. and Mrs. Manitti. Mr. and Mrs. Newhouse. Mr. and Mrs. Eacock.
Now, please join me in welcoming the Principal of Severian, Deacon Kevin McCormack.
So the last few minutes, it's been like awkwardly beautiful. Like from the kids' point of view, this is what you look like. And from the parents, this is what you look like. But it's really very beautiful. And Rob, thank you so much. It was really outstanding. So my wife Gina and I, we have 4 kids. 3 of them are girls, and they're experts in everything. And about a week ago or so, Gina said to me at the table, do you have your I call it a hook, do you have your hook for the Genesis talk? And I said, well, and then my oldest daughter said, please do not use Jerry Garcia. Nobody cares about him. Stop. I love him too, but they didn't. So there's a lot of parents who've heard like all these talks, and apparently my kids have too, because they said Paul Simon can't be used either. You can't use Bob Dylan, and the DJ, Skelsis, which is my favorite, by the way, nobody cares. So Gene said, do you have a hook? I said, well, I did, but I'll get back to you. So Gene said, why don't you think old school? Why don't you think old school? So I said, all right, fair enough. So I went way back to the 3rd century. To St. Irenaeus. Now, St. Irenaeus he's a really important father of the church, but he had a great line, one that's been with me since I was in college, and he said this, that the glory of God is humanity fully alive in Christ. Let me say that again, because that's really profound. It's not Garcia, but it's good. The glory of God is humanity fully alive in Christ. And I was thinking about you guys, to be honest, because it's your day. And I was trying to think, like, what do I tell you? What do I say to you? You have three valedictorians. And the 2 have been outstanding. I'm sure the 3rd is going to be just as good. So what do I have to tell you that's not in 60s folk music and rock and roll? But here's what it is. You guys are bright. Duh, we know that. We know that. You made it to Genesis. You succeeded. You did well. You're bright kids. But you're about to go into some dangerous waters over the next 8 years. 8 years. And what's going to happen in those 8 years is that you're probably not going to have too many classes where you reenact trench warfare in your classroom. And Mr. Bowman, after class, I'd like to talk to you about that. You're not going to have the ability to do the things you did in Genesis. Even New York State has told us we can't use literature as much as we used to. We want nonfiction. We want facts. We want to be able to solve problems, which are all really cool things. I'd like to say groovy things to bring in my 60s background. But there's so much more. And actually, we need so much more. Eventually, we'll develop a computer that will have this artificial intelligence that will give us the facts and solve the problems. But what we need, and we hope that we've given you this over these last few years, what we need is people who can see grace. Now, what the heck does that even mean? You can't measure grace. Most of the world, it won't be in the next 4 years, although some places may be this way, but when you go to college, you got people who say that the idea of God is just as important as the idea of Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. But my goodness, they have it all wrong. They have it all wrong. But you've seen it here. That grace that abounds everywhere. And what is grace? It's God's presence. One of the beauties of being a Catholic, one of the beauties of being in a Catholic school is that we do not offer any apology for the fact that we see God in everything. The great theologian Garrison Keillor once said that Catholics spend their life running from a God who is everywhere, and Lutherans spend their life searching for a God they can't see. When we do it right, Catholics see God in everything. That's why we're a sacramental church. That's why the high point of our prayer is the Eucharist. It's stuff. We love stuff. God makes himself known through stuff. If this was all adults, we could do a little George Carlin right now, but we will not. The stuff, my friends, that you will see will be in the works of your literature. But it'll also be in the friendships that you forge. It'll be in the dreams that you dream. It'll be in the disappointments that you conquer. The grace will abound in everything. Do you have the courage to keep your eyes open? Do you have the belief that even in the most mundane parts of your life, God's glory can be found? If you paid attention for the last 3 years, and you're lucky enough to be in a community that will continue for the next 4 years, do not lose it. We need it. We need it. We don't need a binary world. That's what we're in right now. You're either right or wrong. It's either or. But the Catholic imagination is both and. There's room for disagreement. Jesus is God and man. Mary is virgin and mother. We are sinners and we are God's children. My friends, we need bright kids. There's no doubt about it. We need bright adults. But we need passionate adults. We need people who see God's glory in everything. In everything. So my friends, here's my prayer for you. May you have the fidelity of the saints. May you have the courage of the martyrs. May you have the intellect of the doctors and the fathers and mothers of the church, and may you have the madness of the mystics. If you do that, the world is going to be so much better, so much better. And indeed, people will look at you and say, would such people come from this brave new world? Thank you.
This past Thursday, at the conclusion of our graduation mass, medals and awards were presented to students for achievement in academics and recognition of service. At this time, we would like to take a moment to honor our outstanding scholars by asking them to come to the stage when their name is called. The following students have earned a cumulative average of 95 or above during their time at Genesis. Please hold your applause until all names have been called. Maggie Albunio, Galilee Best, Christian Wanano, Andrew D'Alessio, Lacey Rose DeLucia, Alana Gorga, Jacob Gohl, Catherine Kinshu, Jacqueline Mangini, Emma Markey, Tara Meehan, Eric Newhouse, Neve O'Hara, Tommaso Reris, Brielle Reynolds, Jillian Savoya, Teresa Spieler, Juliana Tepedino. Congratulations.
Please welcome our final co-valedictorian of the class of 2017, Emma Markey.
There's always gonna be another mountain. I'm always gonna wanna make it move. There's always gonna be an uphill battle. Sometimes I'm gonna have to lose. It ain't about how fast I get there. It ain't about what's waiting on the other side. It's the climb. Now that I have your attention, please welcome President Alisi, Deacon McCormack, Mrs. McAvoy, esteemed faculty, guests, parents, and graduates to our last mountain here at Genesis. Together, we have climbed many mountains. We have made it through history fairs and Christmas concerts, presentations and math music videos, first and last days of school. Through it all, though, it has always been about the climb and not about the destination. One of the lessons that I have learned along the climb is that togetherness is key. If we don't work together to get through things, nothing will work. We learned in history that when people in a government don't work together, things will begin to fall apart. In Genesis, things don't fall apart because we all always work together. Sure, we have our friends, and we can't all fit at one lunch table. But when it becomes necessary to help someone, we can band together and we are an unstoppable force. We work together and we can do it. During debates in Mr. Gorman's class, 3 of my friends exemplified this idea. Although they didn't think they could win, they still tried their hardest together as a team. They actually won the class debates because they worked together. Also, there was teamwork of a different kind in the Math Quadratic Song Project. My 2 closest friends and I worked together on lyrics, props, and the video. It came out actually being okay. Again, here at Genesis, togetherness is key. Genesis has also taught us that sometimes in life, you have to choose between turning the page or closing the book. Every situation in Genesis has taught me to never, ever close the book. No matter what it is, the page can be turned. It is much harder to close that book. Even though we are leaving, and many people think we have closed the book here, it still isn't closed. Genesis was just a 3-year chapter in our lives. After the family activity last year in literature class while reading A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, I learned that it is my responsibility to care for the people who don't have the privileges that I do. That is the responsibility that comes with our power. We have been taught to think critically, to use our voices eloquently, to serve God humbly. That is our power. Now, we must go out and assume the responsibility of bringing those things to others. Another one of the most important lessons that I've learned here from Genesis was that you can do anything with love. Love allows you to shine, to persevere. One of the many sources of love comes from family. My parents have been non-stop supporters, and my grandparents, aunts, and uncles are right behind them, sharing love. My brother, too, has been there for me in every situation. And even if you're an only child, I know from experience that cousins will always be there for you, too. Perhaps one of the most important sources of love, the majority of the love, comes from the friends you make here at Genesis. I didn't really realize that friends are so loving until this year. Sorry. I was giving a tour of our school to a mother of the new Genesis class, and when we were in the cafeteria, she asked me a question that made me realize this. She asked me if kids sit alone at lunch, because her son was very shy and was kind of a geek, because he liked robotics and making things and stuff that made him a little isolated at his old school. At this moment, many memories of my first lunch table experiences here ran through my head within seconds. We were all packed at one table, all of us. My answer to this mother was a simple no. He will not be alone here, ever. I said this because he really won't be alone. He really won't. So no matter who you are here, You have people who will love and respect you, even at a lunch table. I know this to be true, because even though this isn't a real word, I have the bestest friends in the entire world. Sorry. Another big source of love comes from the teachers. Not only do the teachers here teach us the subjects, but they also give us the tools to be a better person. Ms. Flanagan taught us that no matter what you do, if you are a genuine and a nice person, you will get very far. Mr. Snyder showed us through his actions that you can't judge a book by its cover, because when you get past someone's tough exterior, you can see that they are a funny, nice person who actually cares about people. Truth. Miss Gilson told me once, personally, that not everything has to be perfect, and that it's okay to make mistakes, even in her class. Mr. Gorman taught us that if we can form intelligent opinions and not put other people down because of theirs, we can sound like educated individuals, especially this day and age. All these lessons boil down to a single maxim. No matter what high school you are going to, no matter who your new friends will be, no matter what you do during or after the school day, be yourself. When you know how to learn from your experiences, you form new values and you can shape yourself into a great person by learning your way. Together, at Genesis, we have met and moved our mountain. Individually now, we move on to our next challenge, well prepared and well loved. Thank you all for both.
Please stand for our closing prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. God in heaven, we have discovered the beauty of your creation. Fill us with thanks for life, nature, and the gift of education. May we use what we have learned these 3 years to praise you with Jesus and the Holy Spirit forever. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Before we officially conclude, I'd just like to quickly thank and acknowledge Alexander Ayu, Genesis class of 2015, who's playing trumpet for us this morning. This concludes the 2017 commencement ceremonies. Following the procession of the graduates and the faculty, we invite you downstairs to the cafeteria for some light refreshments and the opportunity to take photographs. Once again, congratulations to the class of 2017.
Six.
graduates.